Do you remember when Dave Filoni said this about Star Wars Rebels?
A lot of people haven't seen Rebels.
Yep.
And they're going to come into this series, and I'm curious, what arcs on Rebels should people watch prior to watching your series?
Well, I don't think you wouldn't need to watch any. You wouldn't need to watch any.
I took Dave Filoni at his word. I feel kind of lied to. I feel that his statement about not needing to go watch Rebels before you watch Ahsoka is completely false. And we've seen that after 3 episodes of Ahsoka, there are so many gaps in the storylines that we needed filled in by watching the animated TV show Star Wars Rebels. And there's just a ton of fans that haven't watched those things. I think it's fair to say that Disney and Dave Filoni greatly underestimated how many folks really had close connection to these characters, how many folks went and actually watched Star Wars Rebels. It's not as many as they think, and the viewership is starting to show that. Disney Plus released 14 million as the first episode release, but we have nothing to compare it to. Sama TV was reporting that this was a release even less than Obi-Wan and Mandalorian Season 3, so we're not quite sure who to believe. But at the end of the day, we do know that watching these episodes feels kind of jarring for those who don't understand the backstory of these characters. But the problem is, even if you do, the relationship that's this assumed between Ahsoka and Sabine isn't really even in Star Wars Rebels either. It's just assumed that there was this thing. So they're trying to make something out of nothing without filling in the gaps. And when we look back at what Dave Filoni said, he clearly was misleading us to believe that Rebels wouldn't be as essential as a part of the world building for this show. Ahsoka is not a standalone show. Ahsoka is standing on the shoulders of Star Wars Rebels. Now, that doesn't mean that the Ahsoka series has been a bust or a loss. I've still very much been enjoying it, but it's starting to be more and more frustrating to see things like this where we were promised one thing and it's not exactly what was promised. In fact, it's very different, and it's hard to get new folks on board if you're going to have to start saying, well, you have to go watch Clone Wars, an animated show, then you're going to have to watch Star Wars Rebels, another animated show, just to have an idea and an understanding of what's going to happen in this live action show. It's doing 2 different things. It's geared at 2 different audiences. And in reality, they're trying to expand this to a new audience, but the new audience isn't that interested in these characters. And the audience that is, the diehards, are kind of frustrated at some of the storyline choices and some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes. So who is this show ultimately for? Is it for the diehard fan who's watched all that previous content? Is it for a new fan to just walk on the scene and get to know these new characters and not really care about the backstory? Is it for just a mindless Star Wars fan to just be enamored by lightsabers and some cool storylines? I'm not really quite sure. All this to say, I've enjoyed the show so far. It has some major flaws, but I'm willing to wait it out and see. My fear is others are not going to do the same. We're 3 episodes in, and some of the same issues keep coming up in regards to storytelling. We're getting this map to send us to a character that's far away. It's kind of the same thing told again and again throughout the Star Wars universe. It's not doing something new. Now, there are some new exciting storylines behind the scenes, but it might take too long to get there. When are we going to see this other galaxy? And is it even going to be what we've built up in our minds, or is it just going to be a forgotten thing? What are we going to learn more about the Night Sisters? How is that going to play in? And in the reveal of Marok, is that going to play a role, as some are starting to think? What about Ahsoka? What new have we learned about Ahsoka? We've not learned anything new about her. What about Baylan and Shin? It feels like those storylines have been left aside for 2 episodes as we're following Sabine and Ahsoka building on something that people really didn't understand to begin with. So all of that combined, it really is frustrating that Dave wasn't just straightforward and honest to say this is a continuation of Rebels. It actually would have been far better for him just to call it what it is than instead to have fans come to this show hoping for something they didn't get. I think right expectations very much determine your enjoyment of a show. And if your expectations come in for one thing and you're given something different, well, I think that's what's happening right now. Ultimately, I'm excited to see how this ends, and I'm really hoping that these next few episodes take us into the deeper lore of this other galaxy and this conflict ultimately building to a reveal of Thrawn. Honestly, that's all I'm hoping for, and hopefully that's not too much to ask. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you're new here, consider subscribing. And if you want to see one of the most recent videos on my channel looking at the theory of who is Marrok, you can click right here. Remember, the Force will be with you always.